badge costs extra. The history was always free, they just never told you. Ferdinand Porsche held an SS rank. Records indicate he actively requested and negotiated for forced labor allocations when production targets fell short. He was arrested for war crimes, never convicted. And for decades, the brand he built ensured you never heard about any of it. This is what the badge does not tell you. Ferdinand Porsche was born in 1875 in Maffersdorf, a small town in what is now the Czech Republic. He had no formal engineering degree. What he had was an instinct for machines that bordered on the supernatural. By his mid-20s, he had already built one of the earliest functional hybrid electric vehicles ever recorded. By his 30s, he was designing race cars for Austro-Daimler. By his 40s, he was one of the most sought-after automotive engineers on the continent. Brilliant, relentless, and, as history would reveal, willing to work for almost anyone who could fund his vision. That last quality would shape everything. By the late 1920s, Porsche was restless, forced out of Daimler-Benz after clashing with leadership. His private consulting firm was struggling. He had ideas that required scale, resources, and political backing. In Germany in the early 1930s, those things were flowing in one direction, and Ferdinand Porsche followed them there. In 1933, Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. Within months, Porsche had secured a direct meeting with him. He brought technical drawings. Hitler brought a vision, an affordable, rounded car that every German family could own. According to historical accounts, the two men discovered they had been thinking along the same lines. The project had a name, the KDF Wagen, Kraft durch Freude, strength through joy. It would eventually become the Volkswagen, the people's car. And Ferdinand Porsche would be the man who built it. This was not a reluctant arrangement made under duress. Porsche received 200,000 Reichsmarks in development funding, a state-funded factory, and repeated personal access to Hitler. In return, his car became one of the most powerful propaganda tools of the Nazi regime. A national savings program was launched. German workers paid weekly installments toward owning a KDF Wagen. Over 336,000 people enrolled. More than 380 million Reichsmarks were collected. Not a single civilian car was ever delivered. When the war began, the money was redirected. The factory was repurposed. The workers who had saved for years lost everything. That is the context. Now comes the part that is harder to explain away. In 1937, Ferdinand Porsche joined the Nazi Party. His membership number was 5,643,287. Historical records indicate this was not a coerced enrollment. By 1937, joining the party as a wealthy and powerful industrialist was a voluntary declaration of alignment. The same year, he also joined the SS. Then, in 1942, he reached the rank of SS Oberführer, a senior officer rank within the Schutzstaffel, the organization that administered the concentration camp system, carried out mass executions, and enforced the ideological program of the Third Reich. Historians are careful to note that Porsche was not a combat officer. He did not command troops or run camps, but he held the rank. He wore the uniform, he attended functions, and critically, the rank gave him access to something the war effort increasingly depended on: forced human labor. This is where the story stops being about cars. The Volkswagen factory at Fallersleben, built for the KDF program and converted to wartime military production, used forced laborers on a massive scale. Historical records and post-war investigations document that tens of thousands of workers were brought to the facility against their will. Polish civilians, Soviet prisoners of war, concentration camp inmates transferred specifically for factory use. Estimates from researchers and compensation proceedings suggest that by 1944, approximately 20,000 forced laborers were working across the Volkswagen complex. They did not choose to be there. Many did not survive. Not from accidents, not from the fog of war, from the deliberate conditions of a system designed to use people until they could not be used anymore. Ferdinand Porsche made production decisions at that facility. He inspected the plant. According to document records reviewed in post-war investigations, he personally negotiated with SS officials for additional forced labor allocations when production targets fell short. These were not oversights. They were choices. And while those workers were suffering inside his factory, his engineering work was producing some of the most formidable military hardware of the war. He designed a prototype for the Tiger tank. He gave his name to the Ferdinand tank destroyer. He contributed to launch system components for the V-1 flying bomb. Hitler personally awarded him the War Merit Cross. He was not watching from the margins. He was inside the regime, decorated and indispensable. Then Germany collapsed. In May 1945, the Allied forces entered Germany, and the war in Europe ended. The Nuremberg trials began. The world learned, in documented and systematic detail, what had been happening inside the camps, the factories, and the institutions that Ferdinand Porsche had served. He fled toward Austria, briefly detained by American forces, then released. Then came what appeared to be a consulting invitation from France. It was not an invitation. In December 1945, French authorities arrested Ferdinand Porsche on charges of misconduct relating to prisoners of war and workers at French industrial facilities that had come under German control during the occupation. His son Ferry and his son-in-law Anton Pieck were arrested alongside him. Porsche was 70 years old. He had never faced criminal charges in his life. By most accounts, he appeared genuinely unable to comprehend that what he had participated in might constitute a crime rather than wartime industry. That gap between what he did and what he believed he had done may be the most disturbing detail in this entire story. He was held for nearly 2 years, first in Baden-Baden, later transferred to Dijon. The investigation was serious. Documentation of forced labor and wartime collaboration was substantial. Then, in August 1947, he was released after his family paid 1 million francs. Historians and legal scholars have described the payment variously as a legal settlement, a negotiated release, and in some accounts, something closer to a transaction for freedom. A year later, in 1948, a French war crimes tribunal formally acquitted him. The bond money was never refunded. Ferdinand Porsche walked away a free man. No conviction, no sentence, no formal reckoning, just the door and the road back to Germany. He returned to find that his son Ferry had spent the imprisonment years keeping the family enterprise alive, sketching a small, lightweight sports car built on Volkswagen components. When Ferdinand was shown the prototype, records suggest he said very little. He approved it. The Porsche 356 entered production in 1948. Ferdinand Porsche suffered a stroke in November 1950. He died on January 30th, 1951, at his estate in Zuffenhausen, 75 years old. The German press mourned him as a visionary. There was no conviction to reference, no sentence to report, only the legend. For the next 4 decades, the brand grew around that legend. The 550 Spider, the 911, the racing dynasty, the billion-dollar valuation, and the history, the SS rank, the party membership, the labor negotiations, the French imprisonment, remained in the archives. available to researchers, absent from the showroom. Consider what that silence required. The reckoning, when it finally came, arrived through Volkswagen rather than Porsche. In the 1990s, as German industry began a more systematic confrontation with its wartime past, Volkswagen established a humanitarian fund for surviving forced laborers. They acknowledged what had occurred. Compensation was paid. Long overdue, and for many survivors, too late. Porsche AG's engagement with this history has been, by most assessments, considerably quieter. There is a version of this story that reaches for context, of a German industrial class that broadly accommodated the regime, of a war economy that conscripted entire industries, of a moment in history when refusal carried genuine risk. That context is real. Historians acknowledge it. It matters for understanding how systems of complicity operate at scale. But context does not dissolve individual decision. Porsche joined the party voluntarily. He joined the SS voluntarily. He rose to the rank of SS Oberführer. Records indicate he negotiated directly with SS officials for additional forced laborers when output fell short. He did not resist. He did not refuse. He advanced. At every recorded decision point, the evidence shows which direction he moved. Every 9/11 that leaves Stuttgart carries his name. The badge is clean. The history underneath it is not. Ferdinand Porsche died celebrated, acquitted, and largely unexamined. The brand outlasted the scrutiny. The story was curated. And perhaps that is what deserves the most attention. Not just what he did, but how completely a name can be severed from the deeds attached to it. How a logo becomes myth. How myth becomes aspiration. How aspiration moves units. The 9/11 is a masterpiece. It is also proof that the stories we build around objects are almost never complete. Someone decided what to leave out. Someone always does. And somewhere, someone is still paying for that decision, just not the people who made it. If you like our content, please like and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you next time on Torque City.